All right, continuing on with our nightstand build. Last video we did the stain match. Now there's a couple things I want to make sure my client is happy with, and that's how the two-tone is going to look and what bevel angle the front of the cabinet is going to be at. So we're going to make a little mock-up here to illustrate that, and then I'll send that with them with my stain sample. All right, so I'm going to take a chunk of white oak and mill it up and create my sample. All right, I got my blade set up at 22.5 degrees, so I'm going to cut one side with a 22.5 degree bevel. And then I'm going to turn it around, reset the blade, and cut the other side at 45 degrees. So this way the client has an idea of what it's going to look like at 45 degrees and what it's going to look like at 22 degrees. And I'm only using one piece of wood, so this mock-up can represent two different styles for them. All right, my blade's getting dull, it looks like, so I got a little bit of burning on this edge. So I'm going to sand this whole thing up all the way up to 180 grit, and then I'm going to cut this miter for the grain to water fall around, so that way they get a really good visual of what it looks like. But I'm going to sand it up before I do all that. That way, when it gets into the corners where the miter is at, it's way easier to sand now than it is when it's all glued up in a corner. All right, and I have the firmest pad Festool makes on my sander, so that way it doesn't round over my bevel, so I still have a nice crisp bevel when I'm done. All right, so there we go. I'm going to put a couple of dominoes in here to give it a little bit of extra strength. It'd be pretty embarrassing if it fell apart in the client's hand while they were looking at it. Might want to cancel their project if that happened. So just laying out for a couple of dominoes here. All right, let's clamp this sucker up. Let's get these glue blocks off of here, and then we'll sand her clean. All right, so the challenge with doing a two-tone color on here is that when I stain the top, I don't want the stain to run down this front edge. I want a nice, clean, straight edge. So to prevent getting stain on this edge, I'm going to seal this edge with a sealer, with a sanding sealer. All right, so I'm just going to put some tape here. I'm going to crease it along this edge. Taping off the area that's going to get stained because I don't want the sanding sealer to get into the pores, causing issues as well. So that way the stain doesn't have anything to prevent it from soaking in. All right, so that way I should get a nice clean edge along there. Do the other side. And it's good practice each time you do this to start out with a clean razor blade. As the blade gets dull, it's going to cause a frayed edge, which is going to leave you a frayed stain edge. All right, so let's go spray some sealer on this. All right, for the sanding sealer, we're going to use some Seal Coat. Okay, so now the sanding sealer is dry. So I'm going to reverse the process and peel off this tape, and then I am going to tape off the face here where the sanding sealer is at. Now there's a good chance that when I apply the stain is going to soak between the tape and the wood. But with that sanding sealer and the combination of tape, I should be able to easily sand off whatever soaks through and then do a final clear coat after that. And that should give me a nice clean edge here. All right, one thing I didn't mention in my stains video. Oh, Nelly. All right, one thing I didn't mention in my stain matching video when you're working with water-based dyes, that it's a good idea to wet the wood to raise the grain. And then after the wood dries, you can sand it back with 180 or 220 or whatever your finished grit was, and then you'll end up with a nice smooth surface. If you don't do that, this water-based dye will actually raise the grain, and then if you try to sand it back, of course you're sanding off your color. So it's a good idea to raise the grain. And it's not called water popping. That's just some dumb made up term a YouTuber did. Raising the grain. All right, so got my dye on here. I'm going to let it sit for the 5 minutes that I did the same as the test sample, and then I will wipe off the excess. All right, that looks pretty good. Let that dry. All right, the stain is dry, but I'm not going to remove my tape just yet. There's a high likelihood that I have some bleed through that has bled through between the tape and the wood. So since I'm going to have to sand that off, I don't want to get any of that sanding dust in my unprotected stain or raw stain, because that'll be really hard to get rid of. That'll be a very difficult blemish to get out. So I'm going to spray a sealer coat over the top of this, let that dry, then I'll peel the tape, sand anything up, and then do my final finish over the top of that. All right, let's get this tape off and see how bad the bleed through is. All right, so I got a little bit there, so I'm just going to peel this off, and then I'll sand this face, and then I'll recoat the whole thing. All right, so here we go. We have a 45-degree angle on this side, a 22-degree angle on this side, and then we have our two-tone look for the client to decide if they like that and what degree angle they like. So we'll get this sent off and see what they say.